Do you have constitutional questions? Get constitutional answers. We'll be answering your constitutional questions live, so get ready to call in now. Are you a prosecutor, law enforcement officer, or local government employee? Want to make sure you are executing the laws in a constitutional manner? Are you a city council member, township board member, or state legislator? Want to ensure the laws you pass are constitutional? Perhaps you're a citizen who wants to know the proper limits on government and the protections for your God-given liberties. Regardless of your role, call me, Constitutional Attorney Catherine Henry, with your constitutional questions during our live call-in show now at the phone number listed on the screen. And remember, together we can restore freedom.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is the second episode of our fifth season of Restore Freedom Weekly, and my chair is stuck, so I can't roll closer to my desk. Hello, I'm Constitutional Attorney Catherine Henry, and like I said, welcome to the next episode of Restore Freedom Weekly. I see that quite a few of you are already in the chat, so that's great. So you guys can see that too. You know, somebody's asking, what is Stream Elements? Honestly, I have no idea. So I used to use, I think it was Melon is what it was called. And it was part of that family of companies or services, products, whatever you want to call it, related to Stream Elements. And so I used to use Melon for multicasting. That way I was able to stream to YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, all the stuff at the same time. And anyway, I at some point decided it just wasn't, well, it didn't work the greatest, and it cost money to use that. So in order to save money, especially with a significant reduction in the amount of donations that we get, I decided to switch to OBS, where I only stream straight to YouTube. And anyway, I have no idea, other than somehow I think the Stream Elements thing attached to my YouTube channel somehow. And then I don't know what the bot is doing or how it got there, other than I think it has something to do with the fact that I used to use Melon and it's part of the Melon family of products. So anyway, your guess is as good as mine. And we do have somebody that's asked a couple questions already. And I just want to see. Okay, so but hello to all of you who are joining us: Jay Curvitt, Blue Line Transparency, John Q. Public, Danny's Thoughts, Amy, Big Bud 88, and everyone else. So let me see. I guess I'm going to just leave it at that on the screen. So I will hopefully, because I am leaving the live chat small on what you guys see. Hopefully it's still going to be big enough that it'll, you know, catch my eye if you guys have any additional questions. But what I want to do is go ahead and try to address the first couple of questions that Big Bud 88 asked in the live chat. So although, here's what I'm going to do. Although we don't actually have, let me do this, there. Although we don't actually have a caller on the line, I don't have a screen created for, I'm in the middle of answering somebody's question who just posted it on YouTube. So with that being said, I'm just going to throw this screen on. So you guys, that are joining us later on, that's just the screen I think I'm going to use from now on when I'm in the middle of trying to answer a YouTube posed question instead of somebody who has called in. But anyway, okay, so the question is, can you talk about corpus delicti and what's the difference between lawful and legal or unlawful versus illegal? So the first question, corpus delicti, I don't really know what your question is. I mean, that's essentially saying, can you tell me about criminal law or something? I mean, like, it's such a big question. I don't know what you want me to say. And we all know I could talk a lot about a lot of legal topics for a very long time, but in a manner that would probably be far too boring for the average person to want to stay tuned to the show. So tell me specifically, I even have my Black's Law Dictionary open to the page talking about that in case you have a specific element or aspect of a question that I hadn't quite heard of or whatever. But I've done a lot of criminal law. So I've been a public defender in 2 different states. So, I mean, in general, for those of you who don't know anything about it, corpus delicti, the definition in Black's Law Dictionary is this: the fact of a transgression. That by itself is like, what the heck does that even mean? Usually the definitions, I think, in Black's Law Dictionary are, relatively straightforward. They make sense. Okay, they at least make sense to me. But that one, even I'm like, what? So the secondary definition they give is loosely the material substance on which a crime has been committed. Even that, I'm like, come on, guys, this is ridiculous. But it continues and it gives another definition: the physical evidence of a crime, such as the corpse of a murdered person. So the physical evidence of a crime. Why didn't they just say that in the first definition? But anyway, so I assume your question is about the physical evidence a prosecutor must prove in order to find someone guilty of a criminal offense. But again, it is such a big area of law that I don't know. So I'm just going to scroll down real quick to see what the question was. Okay, so of course, Jay Curvitt, you're gonna ask, at least you're asking that kind of a question at the beginning and not at the end, because that would be quite the thing. Amy, if I remember correctly, you are from Michigan, and 7 degrees. I don't know, maybe you're someone who knows me from Minnesota, because that sounds more like a Minnesota temperature at this time of year, but it's in the 30s here. If that makes any of you feel any better, 2 days ago we were in, okay, don't hate me. 2 days ago we were in the 80s. Yesterday we were in the 70s. And today it's in the 30s. So it's kind of hard to figure out, how to dress, what to do, just how to live life when it's a 50-degree swing. But those of you in Michigan know that happens from time to time in Michigan as well. So, okay. So anyway, I didn't see Big Bud. I just scrolled. I don't see any clarification. So if you have any further clarification and you want me to go back into that question, then yes, just clarify what your question is. I'd be glad to try to answer it. I'm trying to keep an eye on this. Okay. So the second question, so to speak, that Big Bud 88 had asked was, what's the difference between lawful and legal or unlawful versus illegal? So here's the thing. In general, I'm going to say there isn't. So if you say something is lawful, something is legal, we're really talking about within the parameters of what the law says. Okay. Now, I wanted to give a few different perspectives because, one of my majors in college was philosophy, right? So one of my degrees is in philosophy. And with that being said, I also know that just a lot of people in general, especially in this crowd, have a lot of philosophical differences and discussions about what different words mean, and they take it in way different directions than I ever would. So I just typed that into my Brave browser, and It gives some, like two different paragraphs about what lawful is versus legal. But the key differences, according to Brave AI, legal is compliance with form or procedure. So you have the correct paperwork, you have the correct court process. Lawful is compliance with the substance, the ethics, justice. So it's fair, it's right, it's morally acceptable. It is what it is, but I'm going to call bullshit on that. Okay. But I am curious about what, let's see here, what Black's Law Dictionary has to say about that. So of course I'm going to go all the way to lawful, and I'm sure it's going to say, oh no, you got to go to some other part of the book here. Oh no, it actually has a definition right where it should be. So the definition of lawful, according to Black's Law Dictionary, is not contrary to the law. In other words, permitted by law. It's pretty easy, and it's pretty much what I just said, right? That's the Black's Law Dictionary of lawful, that I said it was within the parameters of the law, okay? And so when I just read to you what the AI definition of lawful was versus legal, and it talks about more of justice and substance and ethics, what's fair and right and morally acceptable, and that's versus, what's within the parameters of the law, that would be legal. No, lawful is literally what's not contrary to the law, something that is permitted by law. Okay, so legal. It helps if I can spell. So legal. There we go. Legal. Of or relating to law, falling within the province of law, established, required, or permitted by law. Okay, so I don't know about you guys, but something that is permitted by law or something that is permitted by law seems to be the same definition, right? So that is literally the Black's Law Dictionary, which is, dare I say, the official legal dictionary of courts all across our country. Lawful and legal, they have the same definition, okay? So I'm just gonna hold that for later, because I'm sure there's going to be bountiful discussion about that in the chat, and I might have some follow-up discussion myself. So anyway, the difference is nothing. There is nothing, if you really, when you say something is legal or something is lawful, it's, it means within the bounds of what the law is. Now keep in mind, because of course I'm a constitutional attorney, we need to keep in mind that the supreme law of the land is the Constitution. So, if we want to say was an officer's actions was an officer's actions legal? Was his action legal? Or was it lawful? Either way, you're saying, well, what he did, was it within the bounds of the law? And let's say there is a law, a state law, or maybe even an ordinance on the books that says an officer is allowed to initiate a stop without any reasonable suspicion that a crime has been committed. Because they just want to have, I'm just trying to think of what they might say as a justification for such a thing. They just want to have a safe community, and they want to be able to be proactive in combating violent crime, in kidnappings, in sex trafficking, in drug trafficking, whatever. They just want to be more proactive. So you have a local law or state law on the books that says that. Is that actually a lawful stop? No, because the supreme law of the land is the Constitution. First of all, you'd have the United States Constitution, and then secondarily, you would have the state's constitution. So if I'm in the state of Florida, then the state of Florida Constitution. And both of those constitutions, the state constitution and the U.S. Constitution, would prohibit a law enforcement officer from stopping me in my vehicle without any kind of reasonable suspicion that a crime has been committed. So just because it's within the bounds of a particular law does not mean that it's totally lawful, because that law, local, state, or otherwise, could be unconstitutional. And of course, the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Okay, so I've kind of addressed that. If you have any other follow-up questions, discussion, whatever, by all means, please feel welcome to follow that up. Now, keep in mind, I haven't seen, it's possible Lori's in the chat, I just haven't seen her yet. Keep in mind that if you have a question, okay, I'm going to go ahead and type it and what it would look like. I can't type today. Okay, so I just put in there what a question would look like. Wow, is it going to show up on my screen? There we go. Okay, so question. Put the question mark, put the word question in all capital letters, and then put your question itself in normal capitalization. Don't scream at me. I guess you could just use all lowercase, but quite frankly, it is much easier to read and differentiate the beginnings and endings of sentences and the use of proper nouns. And it's just a lot easier for the brain to function when it's proper capitalization. So anyway, so put the question in that format. I did recall seeing some other questions in here though. So I guess I will put the call-in screen on, but I'm going to go ahead and look for the questions that I thought I had seen. Ew, not expecting to get above 22 degrees for the rest of the week. Yeah, I do not miss living up north. I lived up north for a third of my life. No, sorry, 2/3 of my life. Yeah, don't miss it. I don't miss living in Michigan or Minnesota. Okay, so Jay Curvitt has asked me, please address the ice situation in Minnesota. You know what? I'm going to be a smartass. Do you guys see it coming? Okay. Sorry, let me do this. There we go. I'm going to be a smartass and give you the first answer. Yes, there is a lot of ice in Minnesota at this time of year. Temperatures are typically in the teens, maybe even down to 0. In fact, this very month, goodness, what would it have been? 18 years ago. 18 years ago this month, I was living in Minnesota, and I was driving from one courthouse back to my office, and it was, I don't know, it was over an hour drive. And it was on a freeway, but it was so cold that my minivan sounded, it was not very old minivan. My minivan sounded like it was going to die. Like it just was going to quit and I was going to be stuck there. And I thought, how long is it going to take me to get noticed? There's not a lot of traffic on this freeway. It's in the middle of nowhere. And it was so cold that, let me just tell you how cold it was. So on that drive, I decided to call my dad. And I said, Dad, what is the temperature? Now, keep in mind, a year before he had moved back, he had lived in Minnesota for 10 years, but he moved back to Michigan, to Midland, Michigan. And I called him, and he's in Michigan, and I'm in Minnesota. And I said, Dad, what's the temperature there? And he said 27. And I said, wait, 27. Is that above 0 or below 0? I mean, I literally had that as my frame of reference, that I had to ask if it was above 0 or below 0. And he laughs and he said, well, above 0. And I said, well, remember, you were here for 10 years yourself. You know what it's like. I said, Dad, it has been 90 days straight that we have not ever once got above freezing, and 30 days straight where we've never gotten above 0. That's not even with the wind chill. That's just the frickin' straight temperature, people. So when I say I thought I was going to die if my vehicle decided to quit on the side of this, freeway that wasn't really traveled all that well, I literally meant I thought I was going to die. I didn't know how long it was going to take me. No amount of blankets is going to save you when it's that frickin' cold out, people. So To Jay Curvett, I hope you so appreciate my smartass answer that at this time of year, there's a lot of ice in Minnesota every year. Just expect it. A lot of black ice. Now, you put ice in all capital letters, so I'm going to go ahead and answer now that my smartass answer is out and I feel a little bit better. I will address the more serious question at hand, which is about immigrations and customs enforcement being in Minnesota. Now, I don't know how many videos you guys have seen, but obviously, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that within the last 2.5 to 3 weeks, 2 people have now been shot dead at the hand of ICE officers. And if I remember correctly, both of them are in the city of Minneapolis, although an initial report, I saw something about the city of St. Paul. For those of you who don't know, Minneapolis and St. Paul touch. They are literally called the Twin Cities. I have lived in the city limits of Minneapolis, and I have lived in the city limits of St. Paul and a whole bunch of suburbs around. So I am very familiar with those areas. My high school that I graduated from is in St. Paul. The law school I graduated from is in St. Paul, Minnesota. My son was born in Minnesota. My baby sister was born in Minneapolis. So at any rate, I have a familiarity there. Okay, so with all that being said, I know a lot of let me just say that the culture that you see on the TV happening in Minneapolis and St. Paul, really it's just been Minneapolis that we see on all the news stations. It's really looking like it's a new Seattle, right? There's a lot of similarities between, the way that they're trying to, what are all the words? Have their autonomous zones, or they're all their whatever unlawful and illegal bullshit that they're doing. Anarchy and all the rest. It just, there's a lot of similarities between Minneapolis and Seattle right now. Now, with that being said, the 2 instances with ICE, I want you to keep in mind that I don't really know which officer or officers were involved with the actual shooting of the gentleman who was I think he was a nurse of some kind. I can't remember now off the top of my head, who was just recently shot. I don't know the officers, their background, anything about that. But I do know that the officer who is responsible for the shooting death of the woman, and I can't even remember her name right now, but the woman who had the vehicle and whatever, that we've all seen that video, right? That officer had just 6 months prior been run over by a vehicle while conducting lawful ICE operations. And I want to say that was in LA. So the problem that I think, okay, so we have a lot of problems that are all colliding, right? The framework that we have to first of all, let's back up. Forget the framework for a second. These are all human beings. These are not computers. This is not AI. These are not robots. These are all human beings. We have human beings that were shot. We have human beings that are protesting. We have human beings that are being arrested. We have human beings that are doing the arresting. We have human beings that are in the offices of mayor of Minneapolis, governor of Minnesota, president of the United States. These are all human beings. The director of DHS, all human beings, right? That's very important to remember, and something that is maybe obvious, but so easy to forget. So when you have human beings involved, you have to look at the context even more than if it was just the backdrop of a straight mathematical equation, for example, okay? So the backdrop of this is that with that first shooting, that particular officer had been run over by a freaking vehicle 6 months prior in a very similar situation, okay? The second piece of important information to consider for both shootings in both scenarios is that you have a governor and a mayor and a whole bunch of other elected representatives of some kind who are basically openly advocating for riots, for demonstrations, for people to protest against ICE doing what they are doing. Now, it's not that they are saying we need to encourage the lawful enforcement of our immigration laws. They are saying ICE is bad, immigration laws are bad, illegal immigrants are good, anyone who complains about illegal immigrants are bad, and not only are they bad, they're literally a threat, and you have the right to intimidate them and harass them and come after them with every fiber of your being in mobs and in masses and literally swarm them like in the streets of Chicago when, if any of you haven't heard those 911 calls where they are literally asking for local PD to step in and help them because they're on a targeted mission. They're not there trying to police the entirety of the people of Chicago or LA or Minneapolis. They're literally there on targeted missions. They are there trying to arrest people who have violated the law that they have sworn an oath to uphold. And whether it's just straight up immigration law or whether it is immigration law coupled with other violent offenses, regardless, if you violated the law, then why is it that you automatically get a free pass for violating certain laws but not other laws? And keep in mind, no one has made the argument, like we've talked about certain things, certain laws are unconstitutional, and so they're unlawful. You cannot enforce those unconstitutional laws. There has not been even an argument made, let alone a coherent one, about the fact that immigration laws are unconstitutional. I've never even heard of one. What would be the basis for saying immigration laws themselves are unconstitutional? There is no basis. You have no right to enter our country if you are not a U.S. citizen. You have to ask permission, just the same as it works with us going to any other country. I, as a United States citizen, do not have the right to demand entry into China or France or Germany or any other country. They are sovereign borders. They are sovereign entities. So we need to keep that in mind, that this is not a situation where there's a protest about the enforcement of an unconstitutional law and the fact that the supreme law of the land is somehow being violated, because that's not what's happening, and that's not even what they're saying. Okay. My heat is going to kill me. I mean, my whole house is actually cold, but my office, I was trying to keep a little bit warm before I came in here, and it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. I'm going to die of heat stroke in here. Okay, so we need to keep that in mind, that the whole premise going into the whole backdrop is that you have literally mobs of people literally threatening, menacing, harassing, going to the homes of ICE officers, threatening their families and their children. And not even because they've done something inherently wrong or that they've enforced some sort of unconstitutional statute, because they are making an arrest of someone who has violated the law. And the thing is, these people, all these people protesting, they know that they have no leg to stand on when it comes to saying, well, we shouldn't arrest these people because, they didn't violate the law. No, they know they damn well did violate the immigration law, and they have no other way around the problem. So what do? They try to make it an ad hominem argument. They try to make it so that it's, what's right is wrong and wrong is right and everything is upside down, and attack the person, making the argument instead of attacking the argument. I mean, whatever they can do. So they are literally attacking the people enforcing the law. They're not attacking the law because there's nothing wrong with the law inherently. Now, are there a lot of problems with immigration mechanisms that are stopping people from entering that, have a legitimate reason to be here? Sure. I could think of someone right off the top of my head. She lives 30 minutes north of me right now, but she's a Canadian citizen. And she had to go home for a family emergency. When she went home for a family emergency 3 years ago, she tried to come back. And I want to say, I don't even remember all the circumstances, but I want to say it was she and her daughter that got stuck there, and her husband was here, and they couldn't even get back together because they were trying to demand all this extra paperwork from her, things that they already had, or things that, were literally impossible to get. And she told me all the details, and I don't even remember them, quite frankly, because she told me probably 2 years ago now. But it was awful. It was awful. And anyway, the way that it went down was not appropriate. I would say it would be violative of due process. However, I do want to say that I think there needs to be a huge debate about due process and whether that is a right inherent to all people physically present in the U.S. and or trying to get into the U.S., or if that is strictly limited to citizens or lawful residents of the United States. People who are already here and they're here lawfully, because that's my gut instinct. Constitutional protections, if you look at any legal or constitutional protections in France or Germany or any other country, I mean, it doesn't matter. If I'm trying to get into that country, or I go there, but I go there illegally, do they have protections, legal protections for me in that circumstance? No, they don't. So why is it that everyone is demanding those same kind of legal protections for people who are not here lawfully? That's a problem. So at any rate, my friend in that circumstance, was already a lawful resident here, had already gone through all the proper procedures. She was already a lawful resident here. So I would say if an immigrant had any kind of argument to a due process issue on trying to get into the country, it's something like that, where they are a legal resident, they had to go back for a legitimate concern for a legitimate amount of time, and now they're coming back to their home and their business that they've built here, and they're being stopped because of not any legitimate thing, but logistical paperwork, red tape BS. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I would see as the only legitimate argument from those situations. But anyway, all that to say, this whole big thing, you have people protesting our neighbors being taken. Even I saw an article yesterday that the mayor of Minneapolis had called Trump himself. I don't even think it was just the Trump administration. Called Trump himself. They had a conversation. He also had a conversation with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. But Trump had a conversation with the mayor of Minneapolis. And the mayor of Minneapolis, I think the article started off with, "I told the president how much value our immigrant neighbors have brought to our community," and, yada, yada, yada. Okay, I mean, it's just great. They have value as human beings, but they still have to follow the law. So, in other words, it's a slippery slope. Well, this class of people can totally violate this law because they'll end up bringing some sort of other benefit later on down the road. And then this class of people over here rich people. They don't have to file taxes. Everybody else has to file taxes. But this group of rich people, they're going to open businesses and they're going to employ lots of people. And so they don't have to follow the tax law. Why would they have to do that? Or this group of people here, they might grow up to be race car drivers and bring in billions of dollars into the U.S. economy through the NASCAR, realm. And so because of that, we shouldn't hold them accountable to traffic laws, to speed limits, traffic laws, stoplights, slowing down in school zones, that kind of thing. They shouldn't have to be accountable for that, because the benefit that kind of driving might bring to our community later on down the road. And I say our community because where I live right now, I can literally hear when there's a NASCAR race going on. If I am outside in my yard on my own property, I can hear the NASCAR race happening at Daytona International Speedway. So when I say my community, I literally mean my community. If NASCAR is going to bring in a lot of money by having XYZ drivers, it's going to benefit this community. This community benefits from the NASCAR industry. Does that mean that people who are driving like punks down A1A here or I-95 or Nova Road or any of these other International Speedway Boulevard flying around because they're wannabe race car drivers, that they should just get away with violating any kind of laws relating to driving, because someday, it's just training, because someday they're going to end up bringing our community lots of benefit and bringing a lot of money and jobs? That is just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So anyway, you have all of that as the backdrop. Now, to finally really get into answering the question, and I wasn't trying to skirt it, but it's important that we realize every single person involved is a person, and they are human. They all made a choice. Every single person involved made a choice. And the woman, and I apologize that I don't remember her name, but the woman, all know who I'm talking about, with the maroon SUV who got shot and killed 2-3 weeks ago now by an ICE officer. I've seen the videos from multiple angles, including I don't know if it was body cam footage or the officer's cell phone or whatever he was recording with that day. He was struck by the vehicle. She was literally obstructing traffic. She was impeding their ability to go after a targeted person, somebody who was, they had arrest warrants for this particular person. And she was impeding their ability to do that job. She was interfering with that. That by itself is unlawful. That is criminal behavior. She wasn't just she didn't just like park on a residential street and, be in a normal parking space and then just sit there in her car with her window down saying, ICE go home, or something, whatever. I'm just trying to envision how she could do this peacefully without actually interfering. It wasn't like she just put magnets on the side of her vehicle that said, I don't like ICE or whatever. That would be First Amendment protected activity. She didn't do any of that. She literally physically inserted herself into the situation, first of all. Then she did not obey orders to get out of the vehicle and so they could then get the vehicle moved and out of the way, and she was no longer a threat. Then she ramped it up and she ran into at least one officer. So this is not someone who was shot in the back or anything like that. He was literally shooting. He's drawing his weapon as she's already coming towards him. And speaking of ICE, like the other kind, it's slick in Minnesota this time of year. It's different. Any of you who live in Michigan or Pennsylvania or anywhere else, let me just tell you, it is a whole nother world in Minnesota. You get that little bit of melt, and then, it gets up to 32, 33, you get that little bit of melt, and then comes right back down, and you have black ice. The whole state of Minnesota is pretty much covered in black ice for a huge portion of winter. I wasn't joking about that earlier. I mean, I told you a legit, real story just of how cold it was. But when it's so cold, it literally doesn't snow all that often in Minnesota, comparatively. If you look at Minnesota as a whole, and I never lived way up north, but I lived in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Lake Elmo, Brooklyn Park, Marshall, Slayton, I mean, I lived in Southwest Minnesota. I lived in the Twin Cities. That was my main areas of where I personally lived. And I can tell you that it is so cold there. It often doesn't even snow because it's too dang cold to snow. That is drastically different than Michigan. Snows all the freaking time. And the closer you get to the Great Lakes, especially if you're in West Michigan, where I lived the last several years, I mean, it dumps snow on you all the time. And it feels really cold because then if there's that much precipitation and that much cold and all that, cloud cover, then you have less sun and it feels even colder than really what it is. In Minnesota, it's mostly sunny. It is mostly sunny in Minnesota in the winter. So at any rate, the reason why I say all that is because literally, if you have ice on the ground, you have a vehicle that looks like somebody is already acting erratic and they're coming at you on a sheet of ice. What do you think the officer is going to think in that moment? It's not just his life. He's got multiple officers. They have who knows how many, you never know how many civilians. It's daytime, right? It's daytime in a relatively busy neighborhood because it's Minneapolis. It's just a highly populated area. The two most populated cities in the entire state are Minneapolis and St. Paul. If you did not know that, it is by far the most populated areas, right? And then this woman didn't even live there. She didn't even live there. She didn't belong there. She wasn't legitimately visiting anybody. She's there just to not peacefully protest. She's there to cause trouble and physically interfere with what their task at hand is. That's not the way to handle it in the first place. So they're all hyped up. You have this officer who has been previously hit by a car by a freaking psycho before. And you have a governor who's like, yeah, come on, guys, let's protest. Let's demonstrate. Let's do this. Let's stop these bad ICE people. And you have a mayor saying the same damn thing. Okay. Now, I don't know if you've seen this, but I think it was 60 big businesses in the Minneapolis area, 3M, Target, who else? I don't even know the rest of them, but those are the ones I know personally. They have all joined the statement to basically de-escalate the situation with ICE. And I haven't read the statement. I've only read brief summaries from media outlets. It doesn't sound like they're really asking both sides to do what they need to do. It sounds like it's just liberal bullshit and, let's not blame anyone who actually made their own choices here. So anyway, you have all that. I don't think the first shooting was unlawful. I think it was a justified shooting. I think not only was his life literally at risk, this woman is driving on ice, getting ready to floor it at him, and had started to do so by the time he actually pulled the trigger. Really before he even drew his gun. She had already, she had kind of done this with her car and she's already going back towards him before you could see him in some of the footage actually drawing his weapon. He didn't even have his weapon out. He had his cell phone out. He was just trying to record the interaction. Okay. So how dangerous was he trying to be to her if he's just trying to record the interaction? No, he's trying to cover his ass, right? He's like, this is the kind of bullshit that needs to be stopped. So anyway, he doesn't even get, she's already coming at him and he's drawing his weapon and he shoots her because he's trying to stop the threat to his life, the threat to the lives of all those around him, and possibly who knows how many pedestrians, people that might be in other vehicles, whatever the situation is. Because in those kind of situations, you can't just assume if somebody's willing to physically harm or potentially kill those in their immediate vicinity right now, or they're not going to necessarily just drive off and all of a sudden be peaceful and not threaten anybody else all day long. That's not how this works. I think that was a legitimate shooting. But then you have the second shooting that just happened. And I have not seen enough. I'm sure there's plenty of angles because that was an area, it was a business district. So I think there's going to be a lot more customers of different businesses. There's going to be security cam footage. There's going to be, whatever. I think there's going to be a lot more footage that I personally have not seen. I've seen a few different angles, but the angles, I think it was somebody that was a customer in a restaurant. And the image that I saw there, it looked like, again, I wasn't there, and I will say I'm not making harsh judgment on either side because I feel like I didn't see enough footage to see really what was happening. But based on what I saw was a guy who had a cell phone in his hand, and reports were that he had been recording them, that he approached them with the cell phone in his hand and was recording them and didn't like whatever he saw happening. Now, I'm not saying that was the right thing to do at all. I don't know. I wish I had, I wish somebody had a drone that was watching the whole thing right then and there and saw the whole thing, and I could review that footage and see exactly what he saw and what he was trying to do, because especially given the tense nature of everything right now, if they're making an arrest and you think it's an unlawful arrest, in a normal situation, if you just see somebody on the street and you just see what appears to be a totally unlawful arrest, I'm not even sure that it would be the right time to try to say something then. Maybe. Certainly what I would do is make sure to have contact with that individual. Give them your contact information. Make sure they and their defense attorneys know how to reach you. Make sure you write a full statement. Make sure any video footage that you have that can exonerate them or help clear their name, you are recording that, you are sharing that, you are bringing it to the media, you are trying to get those charges dropped for that person. That's the kind of stuff that you should be doing. Should you necessarily be interfering in that initial, encounter, that if there's an arrest being made? I don't know about that. Now, if you see somebody being beaten, yes, you should say something about it. And maybe that's what this guy saw. Maybe he saw somebody being violently attacked by law enforcement, which I know happens. I personally know that happens. So, of course, my heater came on over here. Hold on a second, guys. Okay. So, with that being said, because there's so much to the story that I don't know, what I can tell you is that based on what I saw, he had a cell phone in his hand. He was armed, but it was a concealed carry with a permit, and he wasn't touching, grabbing for his gun at all. He had a cell phone in his hand. And at the time he was shot, he had a cell phone in his hand like this. His other hand, I believe, was up kind of like, I don't remember if a law enforcement officer already had grabbed this arm or whatever, but he was facing down, like they were already in the motions of subduing him and arresting him. And there were, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 officers literally in his immediate vicinity, within an arm's reach of him. It did not appear he was trying to flee. If anything, he was maybe still trying to record. Who knows? Maybe he was saying to them, please don't let my phone break. Can you just take it? I don't want to let it drop. I know when I was violently and illegally arrested, I was saying those kinds of things to them. Could you please let me set my phone down? There was literally a table, 6 inches from me. And I said, could you just let me set my phone down there? I just don't want it to break. Could you let me set it down? And they wouldn't let me set the fucking phone down. How ridiculous is that? There were such control freaks that they wouldn't even let me do that. I mean, even if they wanted to have, grab a hold of one arm, and so I'm not running, and where would I run to? They knew who I was. They baited me down there to talk to them. Anyway, the whole thing is bullshit. But what I'm saying is that kind of thing does happen. So I could legitimately see that he's possibly saying, well, hey, I want to keep recording this. This doesn't seem right. Why am I getting arrested? Or maybe he's saying, hey, can you let me put my phone down? Or can I put it in my pocket or something? He had his phone in his hand, and they knew that he had a phone in his hand. And then they shot him. So, and multiple shots. and that an agent had yelled gun just because they saw that he had a gun, but they were literally already in the process of subduing him. So if you're already like struggling with the man, bringing him to the ground, and you're going to see that he has concealed carry, just seeing that he has a gun, if he's not reaching for it, why would you yell out gun? I mean, you need to find a way to clearly communicate, because I don't think I think the person that saw it, you know, yelled gun. I could be wrong. I don't think that person shot him. I think it was another ICE officer who shot him. And if all they're seeing and hearing, they're seeing this commotion and they're hearing a fellow officer yell gun and they just shoot him, I don't know. I mean, so based on the footage that I saw, which was very minimal, I would say that it was not a justified shooting at all. It was not okay. I don't know. I don't think it would be, given the circumstances and the limited information I have, I don't think it would rise to the level of murder. I think it would be manslaughter. I think there's a reckless indifference for someone's life. I don't think the ICE agents intentionally just tried to shoot someone for no reason. I think there was poor practices, poor communication. And I just want us to remember, the guy who died was a human. The guy who shot him was a human. The guy who yelled gun was a human. The guy who's the mayor and who's the governor, those two guys that are telling people to be out there protesting and make sure you're as disrespectful and, you know, as obnoxious as possible as ICE officers are doing their thing. And they're just demanding that ICE leave Minnesota. Minnesota has been a huge magnet for illegal immigrants for decades. I could tell you that from living there for a decade myself. And it did not make the city any better or safer. So, or the state. I mean, regardless, if we're talking about St. Paul, Minneapolis, whatever. So at any rate, we need to remember all these people are humans, and we need to not judge if we are not there and if we don't see enough legit footage that really shows the whole picture. So I think we need to keep that in mind. But from what I know, the first shooting was justified. The second one was not. Does that mean ICE needs to be removed from Minnesota? No, I don't think so. I think they need to have, you know, I think things on both sides need to change. I think Tim Walz and all of his little liberal cronies, they need to start doing their damn jobs. They need to stop encouraging lawlessness and contention. They need to try to point to specific things that are actually at issue. What is a specific due process element that is missing? If they think there's a due process element that is missing, where, you know, rights of people are being violated, what specifically is that? Because being arrested for being an illegal immigrant is not a bad thing. That's enforcing our laws. So anyway, I could go on forever. That's why I kind of hesitated to start to answer that question. Oh my goodness, guys, we haven't even, let me do this. I'm going to switch to that. Okay. Oh, dang. Okay. There's been a lot of chat, which is good, but let me see. Kind of switch the height of my table. Okay. So John Q. Public had asked a while ago, as a former law enforcement officer, and I don't know what MILCOM vet is, other than if you're just saying military vet. I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. But anyway, a veteran Why is so little time spent on constitutional law and law enforcement academy training instruction to avoid unconstitutional arrests and prosecutions? Exactly. Exactly. And I would say, this is my own personal view, I think law enforcement officers should actually have to go through law school and then the physical training aspect. So you need to go to college. You need to learn about history and the dynamics of our country and the two-party system and, just common sense, how businesses function and just different things about real life. Because if you're a law enforcement officer, you're going to be out there enforcing the law for real people in real life situations. And you might come across elements of, a business dispute, a domestic dispute, just different things that you just have to live a little life to be able to know how to deal with things in certain situations. So I think there needs to be that kind of an element. I think there needs to be certainly literally going to law school, having a law degree. How can you possibly be entrusted to enforce the law if you don't have a law degree? Now, here's the thing. I actually think that we need to drastically reduce the amount of laws we have on the books so that the average high school student knows all laws on the books before they graduate from high school. That's actually what I think, which would then not require any specialized training on enforcing the law, and nor would it require any specialized training to be a lawyer. When I say that I think law enforcement officers should have to have a law degree before they even go through the physical aspects of police training, I say that given the current state of how many laws are on the books now, that you should have to have. But let me also preface by saying the vast majority of law schools that are in service right now, that operate as law schools right now, are total nonsense, liberal garbage that have nothing to do with the Constitution. So I'm not even saying that it should be go to Yale Law School right now, or even my own law school. I have a short video that I've been wanting to do as a response video, if you will. I might record that later today. But anyway, I'm appalled at my law school. I am appalled at the emails that I've been getting, the way that they're talking about things like food justice and, rights to medical care and just all kinds of things that, from a perspective that everything should be handed to you. And even if you're an illegal immigrant, everything should be handed to you. And it's totally unjust if you are not given everything, every basic necessity of life. If it's just not handed to you, then it's not just. I think it's bullshit. I think it's lazy. I think it's ridiculous. And I'm pissed off that I spent a lot of years working my ass off to earn my law degree from an institution that has turned around with that ridiculousness. Because that stuff never came out of the law school. There were never emails sent like that from the law school before now. 20 years ago, that didn't happen. So anyway, I say all that to say, I mean, all lawyers and all law enforcement officers should have to go through a truly constitutional law school education. Not that they have to pass some sort of bar exam, none of that. That's not what I'm talking about. I just mean you have to be able to know the law, starting with the supreme law of the land, before you can enforce it or work in that realm. So why do they not was the question, and it's because our system is failing us. Okay, I have a question from Amy. Kash Patel's statement that you can't carry a firearm loaded to a protest event. What is wrong with these people once in government? Yeah, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't personally hear the statement. I didn't even read a news article about it. I think I heard it in passing in recent days, weeks, something. So I can't really speak to certainty about exactly what he said, but let's assume for the sake of argument that he said you can't carry a firearm to a protest event. So we are supposed to put all kinds of rules and red tape about when it is appropriate to be able to defend yourself. So we have the Second Amendment, which says the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. But what we mean to say is if you're exercising the First Amendment, you cannot also exercise the Second Amendment. Okay. So if you're exercising the First Amendment or Second Amendment, I guess they expect that you also then cannot rely on the Fourth Amendment, unreasonable searches and seizures protection, or Fifth or 14th Amendment due process protections, or 14th Amendment equal protection of the law, or Ninth Amendment, the right to all those other God-given liberties that are not enumerated in the Constitution. You have to pick one or the other. So today's a Tuesday, I'm going to pick my right to bear arms. In fact, I am going to arrange tonight. So I'm going to pick the Second Amendment. Oh, crap, because I'm having this show right now. I'm exercising my First Amendment protected liberties. Crap, I can't also then on the same day exercise my Second Amendment protected liberties? Oh, shoot. That's literally what they're saying then. No, that's asinine. I don't know. Anyway. Okay. Question. Oh, so that drew my attention in my own example of what a question should look like. I was like, ooh, that's a question with capital letters. Okay, so you're asking me about. All right, John Q. Public is asking me, why does the Pennsylvania v. Mims 1977 doctrine of officer safety permitted to circumvent the protections provided by the Constitution? The second we allow the government to continue to talk about case law and case precedent as though it somehow explains and abrogates and is allowed to explain and abrogate what is actually written into the language of the Constitution, the second that they're going to continue to do it. Like, if we continue to focus so much on the case precedent, the case law, as they call it, for those of you who are going to be listening to my podcast version of this show later, I am using air quotes every time I say the word case law, because case law does not exist for a reason. Judicial branches here in our constitutional republic are not allowed to make law. It's not their damn job. They are there to solve disputes, to resolve disputes between parties. That is what they are there to do. And to, if the party, especially as one party is a citizen and one party is the government, if the citizen is saying, hey, the government is violating my rights here, then another branch of government is supposed to step in and say, yes, that is not okay. So if Congress enacts an unconstitutional law, it is supposed to be the executive branch that says, that is bad. We are not going to enforce that. It is unconstitutional, and it is our job to support and defend the U.S. Constitution over and above any bullshit laws that Congress enacts. And if somehow Congress enacts an unconstitutional law and the executive branch decides to enforce an unconstitutional law, then it is the job of the judiciary, of the courts, to say, nope, the buck stops here. We are not going to allow that anymore. You cannot enforce or enact any unconstitutional laws. They must be taken off the books and no longer enforced. That is their job. None of the branches work the way they're supposed to be working. Absolutely none of them. So that answers, I don't care what the case is. It could be Pennsylvania v. Mims. It could be the Bruin Second Amendment case. It could be the Dobbs supposed right to life case. It could be any number of cases. The second that we put too much weight in the Supreme Court or any court to interpret or expand upon or abrogate the actual wording of the laws or the Constitution, then we are just setting ourselves up for failure and for having to go with whatever they dictate to us. Let's see. Going climate change. Man, I wish I could remember what I said at 12:20 to make you even joke about me going all climate change. Man, I need to watch what I say. Yikes. Okay. So I'm just looking to see if there's any other questions because okay. Renee Good. Thank you. Renee Good. I'm not sure what the other names are there, but anyway, yes, he was disarmed and then shot. Well, okay, so I do want to follow up on something real quick. That Blue Line Transparency says you would think you'd not. So referring to the Renee Good situation, the first shooting of ICE involved shooting in Minneapolis 2 or 3 weeks ago. He said his opinion is, or his statement is, you would think you would not stand in front of vehicles in the road after being run over. Sounds like premeditated to me. Her actions were premeditated. She drove a vehicle as a weapon at officers. Regardless of whether they're officers, she drove a vehicle at human beings. Now, this is different than when you have, let's say in LA or any of these other cities where these liberal crazies are on freeways or even on normal city streets, and they are amassed in these just huge numbers, and they come and they're trying to stop the normal flow of traffic. And here you are, you find yourself like, I'm just a mom, I'm getting my kid from point A to point B, and all of a sudden this crowd of people is all around me, they're banging on my car, they're yelling at me, they're stopping me from moving. As Governor DeSantis has talked about, and some of our sheriffs have talked about, if you do that here in Florida to get away from a mob, you are not at fault. And quite frankly, you would not be legally responsible in any jurisdiction where the true law is actually being followed. In that situation, if you end up running over somebody because they are trying to falsely imprison you, and they're trying to threaten you and menace you and everything else, and you are afraid for your safety, you can just drive to get out of there, but do so in a way that's reasonably prudent. The standard is really, what is a reasonably prudent person going to do? And I actually talked about this at one of my self-defense trainings last night, that it's a reasonably prudent situation. What would you do? What would a reasonably prudent person do if they're in that threatening, menacing situation? That contrasts totally with Renee Good, because she purposely put herself in the situation. This wasn't a group of ICE officers that all surrounded her, came to her. She was there visiting a friend. They came to her. They surrounded her vehicle. She had no idea what they were doing. They were threatening her and pointing guns at her and screaming at her, and she feared for her life. And then she's trying to, no. She inserted herself in that situation. It was the FAFO, okay? She was there to cause problems and then tried to use her vehicle as a frickin' weapon. And the officer did not even have his weapon drawn until the vehicle was moving towards him. So her actions were definitely premeditated. His were not. When you're trying to enforce the law, you don't have to let the person get away at all costs. And that means if they're going to physically harm you and those around you to get away, you don't have the obligation to just let them get away. Like, what the hell kind of sense does that make? No. But that's a totally different story than what happened in Minneapolis this last week. What happened to Renee Good is totally different situation than what happened to him. He was not pointing a vehicle with his foot on the accelerator to anyone. He did not have any weapon in his hand. At the time he was shot, they knew he didn't have a weapon in his... The person who yelled gun knew he didn't have a weapon in his hand. They saw his hands. They saw him holding the phone that he had already been holding when the confrontation happened. He didn't try to chuck the phone at them. He didn't try to use it as a weapon with a big OtterBox case and try to beat him over the head or poke him in the eye with it. He was using the phone as a recording device. Again, I'm not saying he was there in any legit capacity. He probably would have been, should have been charged with obstructing justice and in interfering with the lawful duties of an officer. I'm assuming, based on the information that I have, he committed a criminal offense, but there was nothing that I saw that would justify them shooting him at all. So, but again, I'm not even saying that 100% certain because they're humans and I don't know what they all saw and I don't know what they all, heard. And I don't know, again, we talked about that it was the one officer that yelled gun. So if you have other officers that hear an officer yell gun and, the one yelling gun is closer on the ground and there seems to be potentially a struggle. I mean, I get it. They're humans. So it's a tough situation. Anyway, I just wanted to address that. Yes, Lori's here. Hi, Lori. Glad you are joining us. And Lori, I don't know if you have a different phone number, but you never responded to my last several messages. So please text me back if you have the same number or email me if you don't have that number anymore or something. You know how to reach me. But girl, I even tried to say happy birthday to you last weekend. So, okay, where's my app? Hello, this is Catherine. Who am I speaking with?
Hey, Catherine, this is Danny.
Oh.
Danny Thoughts.
Yes, hi.
Yeah. I wasn't even going to come in on this subject, but I keep hearing the same thing. The Renee Good thing.
Okay.
Okay, I watched the videos from several different angles.
Okay.
Okay, one of the things is the officer that was saying that she was driving towards him, in the video you see a gray SUV pull around her. He was in that gray SUV. He pulled around her, blocked her in, got out of the SUV, and stood in front of her car. When she went to she backed up. So she had the wheel turned to the left as she was backing up to pull the front of her car away from the officers. When she went back forward, she turned it to the right to pull the front of her car away from the officers. In listening to a lot of the different things on this, there has been an officer who made the statement that we do these kind of things to put ourselves in harm to justify what we are about to do. So he may have been there with a camera, but he was justifying putting himself at harm to do what he did.
I think that's bullshit. And I'm just telling you from the footage that I have seen. From the footage that I saw myself, I think what you're saying is bullshit. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. I'm just totally disagreeing with you. And you're entitled to your opinion, and that is fine. And I respect that you have your own opinion based on what you've seen and what you've heard. But I think you're attributing to him motive based on some random other third person that you wouldn't want somebody attributing motive to you about. So we don't know exactly what he was thinking. All we know are facts. Right? Like we know the fact that he had been hit by a prior vehicle. We don't know what that effect has had on him. I'm not assuming anything about that.
Okay, now on that, he wasn't hit by a prior vehicle. He was dragged by a prior vehicle. In other words, he had stuck his hand in the car, was hanging onto the window frame, whatever. So he was at the side of the vehicle. He wasn't hit directly by a vehicle.
Okay, so you're going to split hairs over a vehicular assault.
Well, if he had backed up, he wouldn't have been dragged, would he?
I think that's total nonsense. That is the biggest load of bullshit I've ever heard. I'll tell you what, if there's somebody who is illegally, they're doing something that's unlawful, not one of these bullshit laws like, they whatever tried to exercise their Second Amendment and First Amendment rights on the same day, right? I'm like a legitimate law, okay? Somebody is actually violating a legitimate law, and a legitimate law enforcement officer is there trying to do a legitimate purpose of enforcing the law. I don't care, even if it's not a legit. Let me just say, I have been pulled over. I have been stopped. I've been illegally and violently arrested, okay? But even after I was illegally and violently arrested, when I moved down here, I was unlawfully stopped by Daytona Beach Shores police off of A1A. And they were totally, I could tell the vibe from the beginning. They were threatening. They were obnoxious. They were very power trip hungry. It was a whole bunch of bravado and bullshit. And I never in a million years would have thought that I had the right and the authority and the that I would be justified in using my vehicle as a weapon against them. I kept asserting my right to leave verbally, but it was maintained in park. And I actually wasn't even driving. My husband was driving. But let me tell you, there's no way in hell that I would have said like, hey, Mike, yeah, let's just go. Oh, no. No, there's a time and a place to fight against the unlawful behavior of an officer. But in the situation where they are investigating, they're questioning, they're doing whatever, it's a verbal situation. You do not have the right to use a vehicle or anything else as a weapon against an officer. If you think you do, you're fucked up. There's no excuse for it. Absolutely no excuse.
I'm not saying that at all.
That's 100% what you're saying. You are justifying, you are saying it's the officer's fault in both situations. When he had vehicular assault in the first instance in California, that it's his fault. It's not the fault of the person who was driving and dragging him. And you think it's his fault that Renee Good struck him with her vehicle. I think that's total bullshit. She was the one fucking driving. And this stuff pisses me off because I'm so sick of all these people in our lives that are entitled, especially the new generation, my son's age, we have 2 daughters the same age, all 3 kids in their 20s. The whole freaking generation, everybody's so entitled. They think everything revolves around them, just the way that people drive. I mean, I can't get from the grocery store to home without people trying to freaking kill me because they think they have the right to run red lights, to do whatever. The entitlement is it's through the roof. And it needs to be about personal responsibility and personal accountability. And there is a correct time and a place, but there is a time and a place. There is a time and a place to be able to address when somebody does something wrong. There is a manner that you choose to fight something. And trust me, look at me now. I mean, I'm just getting pissed off talking about this. I am not one that's just going to back down and take fucking shit from anybody. So I'm not saying that somebody should sit there and just let somebody, unlawfully arrest them and just go, oh, okay, well, I'll just have to deal with it is what it is. And no, you fight back, but you fight back lawfully, rightfully. You don't ever get to use your vehicle as a weapon. These officers were not physically assaulting or hurting Renee Good or the initial officer from the LA situation from 6 months ago. He was not hurting anybody when he was then dragged by the vehicle. That's a totally different story than the Minneapolis shooting that just happened. They already had him subdued. They already had physical control of the situation. He was not harming them. He was not a physical threat to them. And they shot him. And I think it's important to look at those differences. But to say that it's the officer's fault in any way for either of the first 2 situations, no, not even close.
Well, I think in the Renee Good thing, now, don't get me wrong. I'm saying there's more at fault than just Renee Good. Because the officer, you can watch in the very first video when the one officer's at the side of her car talking to her, drives around, and if you watch later on the video, that same vehicle is parked in front of her. That's the officer that got out of that vehicle and placed himself in front of that car. So he's at fault for placing himself in front of a vehicle.
No.
He's in fault.
No. What? No, wait a minute. Wait a
minute. You said another statement earlier, though.
But why? I want to follow up on that.
They are there for one purpose only.
But why?
They are not
Hold
there
on.
to
No,
do
that's a
anything
totally
with the
different
law.
story. That's
They're
a
to
different
get
story. Wait,
illegal
stop.
immigrants.
I want to hear what you have to say on that one point before you start making 10 other points. You've said this repeatedly now. Why is he at fault for putting himself in the front of the vehicle? Why is that a fault of his?
What was he doing? He was videoing. He wasn't saying anything. And if I put myself in front of a vehicle, who is at fault? I am.
No.
What makes him any different than me?
Are you on drugs?
Yo, I'm not going to do that. That's why I'm not on drugs.
That makes no sense
It'd be
whatsoever.
It'd be
This
stupid.
She's not someone that was just, in the neighborhood hanging out. She put herself in that situation to antagonize and to literally impede what their lawful operations were. They were there trying to do their job. As you pointed out, they had a specific task to do. She purposely was trying to obstruct that operation. And from what you're saying, you're seeming to imply that just because their job is not to deal with or address lawful, citizens that are here lawfully, that somehow they have to then ignore the citizens that are there impeding their actual job that they are there trying to do lawfully. That's not how this works.
In watching the videos, where was their call to action, as lack of a better word that I can't think of, where was the scene at that they were trying to get the illegal aliens from? There was nothing in front of her car because they had to drive around in front of her to park the car in front of her. So it was all behind her. They brought themselves all up into where she was at.
No, I don't know where you're getting that stuff. You are filling in a bunch of blanks with a bunch of stuff that makes no sense.
Well, if the officer,
hold on. Let me clarify something.
She was up in front of her.
Hold on. Are you saying she was not obstructing their operations? Is that what you're claiming?
Yes.
Wow.
Because her operations would have been behind her.
Not even close.
There was not a single officer that came from in front of her car, except for the one that drove around in front of her, that put themselves in front of her car.
Not even true at all. I don't know what videos you've seen, but that's not even true at all. So you're saying that
there's like 4 different videos out there from different angles.
Yeah, I've seen more than 4 videos. I've seen more than 4 angles, and none of them at all agree with what you're saying. But not only that, she was literally stopping the flow of traffic before the other vehicle got there that you're talking about. She was literally in that residential street, parked at an angle, obstructing the flow of traffic. And you're saying that was just fine? She wasn't doing anything wrong?
I'm not saying that's fine. I don't say that's okay. But where did the ICE officers have a responsibility to take that traffic violation and turn it into something that...
And you think it's just a simple traffic violation? You think that's all that it was about? So
maybe that's not what it was about, but that's what it was.
The wife got, bullshit. The wife got out of the vehicle. She's walking around. She's antagonizing. The other one that died had the window open and she's screaming at him. They're doing all kinds of stuff to interfere and antagonize. They were not just like simply driving through the neighborhood or just stopped legally on the side of the road and then trying to leave and go somewhere else. That's not at all what they were doing. They're literally, their purpose there was to antagonize and interfere with what ICE was doing. That's literally what their purpose was. That's what they've stated their purpose was.
Did you hear what Renee was saying to the officer with the window down?
At what point? What are you getting at?
When she was hollering at the window. There's a video where she's hollering out the window before she was shot.
Let's fast forward this.
The officer was standing up beside her.
Yes, what?
And she had her window down.
Yes, and she said what?
And she was saying, "I'm not against you. I'm not here to do anything, to hurt you."
That is
Those
nothing.
were her statements.
Those were not the statements at all that I heard in the videos. She never said anything like that in the videos that I heard. Not even close. Everything she said was antagonistic. Everything she and her wife said in those videos was antagonistic. So I literally, I
Well,
can't imagine what version of a video that you've seen, but it must have been somehow altered because nothing that I saw. And I always try to watch it from different sources to make sure that it's all, that I'm, because you never know. Stuff is faked and it's AI and you can hardly believe what you see
well,
anymore.
I've seen it from. Here's the deal. John Felix went through it. I can't remember who all else, but I've seen like 4 or 5 different explanations. And even when they're doing their explanations, I'm looking for the other things. What is being missed in this explanation? Not do I agree with what they're saying even. So I'm looking at it from my point of view, from what I'm seeing with my own 2 eyes. I've seen her back up with her wheel away from the officer.
Regardless, I
her turn
inherently
away the other
disagree
way.
with you. I just inherently disagree with you on so many levels of this because you never have the right to use your vehicle as a weapon in those kinds of scenarios. She used her vehicle as a weapon. It's not the officer's fault. At that point, keep in mind, the officers were all around her vehicle at that point because at that point she had been ordered multiple times to exit the vehicle. Before he ever went to the front of the vehicle, another officer who was closer to the driver's side had already instructed her to get out of the vehicle multiple times because she wouldn't move the vehicle.
Came up to the car from behind, and that was the first time she was told to get out of the car. The other time she was told to move the car.
Yes.
She was in process of moving the car.
No, she was not.
Around in front of her.
No, she was not. No, she was not. She was not trying to just leave the area. They initially asked her to leave the area, and she did not leave the area. It was only when she refused to leave the area and her wife was out of the vehicle, which also suggests she was not trying to leave the area. So the wife is out of the vehicle. They're both yelling and antagonizing and saying things about ICE and this and that and whatever. And then still not leaving, still not trying to leave, still not communicating that she would like to leave at that point. They're saying you need to leave. Then, since they made that clear that they were not leaving and she's obstructing the situation, she's now causing a disturbance when they're trying to do what they're there to do. Then they tell her to get out of the vehicle, because they just need to deal with that and move on to what they're there for. And then she doesn't get out of the vehicle. Then she's continuing to move the vehicle. At that point, there are officers all around her vehicle, not just the guy who's in front with the camera, but they're all around her vehicle and they're telling her to get out. Then she uses her vehicle as a weapon and hits him. There is nothing justified about her actions that day. Absolutely nothing. No person, and this isn't even a political issue. I don't care what they're there for. They could be there for something that they're not supposed to be there for. The way she's handling it is not okay. And if you follow, I don't know if you and I are people that have talked for a long time. I don't remember you calling in before. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But if you know anything, if you know anything about me, I am not like this whole thin blue line supporter here for the, back the blue. I'm all about, I'm not at all about assuming cops are going to do the right thing. I myself have severe PTSD after what happened to me on Election Day 2020. I don't want to be anywhere near police. I don't trust them. I think most of them are ignorant and stupid and hateful and arrogant, and they would probably hurt me if given the chance. That's honestly what I think. But I'm not going to assume that about every single officer. And certainly just me assuming that about or knowing that about a bulk of the officers that are in law enforcement these days does not give me the right to then lash out and use my vehicle as a weapon. Trust me, when I was pulled over and then backup came and there were two Daytona Beach Shores vehicles boxing me in this little parking lot, my PTSD went through the roof. I started the interaction and I was not doing well. And I decided, what am I going to do here? I'm going to secure my safety by going live. I thought this is a way that I could try to de-escalate. I was trying to talk to them and trying to de-escalate and being, going live on my YouTube channel and just trying to handle it whatever way I could. My stress was through the roof. I was shaking by the time we left there. But that does not give me the right to use my vehicle as an assault weapon.
Okay, let's make an assumption here. Okay? let's say Renee had no clue that an officer was standing in front of her car because she was dealing with the guy at her window.
So you should move your vehicle forward at all when you're not looking in front of you?
So she turns around as she's moving forward and realizes there's somebody in front of her. As the next minute, she gets shot. So now her vehicle's moving because there's nobody there to stop it.
That's making a huge assumption. That is making a huge assumption that is not based in reality or logic whatsoever. Again, she had no right to move the vehicle at that point. She should have put it in park, and if she had some sort of issue with, them questioning her or whatever at that point, she has ways to address that correctly, safely, lawfully. That does not give her the right. I mean, it's like we're grasping at straws to give her any excuse possible to not be responsible for what she brought upon her. She brought that upon herself. And I don't know if, it could turn out that the person that they were there for, that the warrant was, based on some faulty information, or, the case gets thrown out or whatever. That's par for the course. But that it does not justify the way that it was interfered with and the way that it was handled. That's not a peaceful protest. That's not at all how the system is supposed to work. So I'm going to have to agree to disagree with you on this. Maybe it sounds like I need to have a...
Hopefully both of us can go through and watch more videos on that particular item and come up with that. Now, on the other guy getting shot, that was totally wrong, and I agree with you there. And like I put into your comments, when he was shot, the video shows both of his hands were underneath him, and you could see him at his chin. One was holding his phone, and the other one was there. So there's no way he could even reach his gun. So there was no reason for him to have been shot. That was a bad shoot. That was totally over-aggressive. And what started that is one officer pushing two women into the snow. Whether they were doing anything, they didn't do anything to harm him, and he physically went on with them and started it all. And I think that's probably the same officer that shot him.
And that's where all I'm saying is, at least for me, if you guys have the same information that I do, which is not taking it from anybody's summary or perspective, but literally seeing a video for yourself, I have not seen enough footage to know for sure that the person who, made the kill shot did something inappropriate given the context. Now, as a whole, the guy should not have been shot. All I'm saying is that the person, based on my understanding, the information that the person who yelled gun, that the officer who yelled gun, he should not have yelled gun in that situation. They already were subduing him. They could have simply placed his hands behind his back, arrested him, and taken the gun from him and, moved on with their day. But when you have one officer, when things are on the ground like that, all of the other officers aren't seeing exactly what's going on, right? You can't see all the hands and arms and legs and, where there's weapons and whatever. And so, and mind you, there's a crowd of people. That's why it's important we remember that everybody involved is a human, because there's all these other people around that are antagonizing and threatening and menacing and loudly protesting, and they don't know at what point it's going to erupt into total anarchy and violence out there. So they're trying to keep their head on a swivel. And then if one of the other officers yells gun, all I'm saying is that the officers that actually shot, I could see the potential that they did not even have that given their line of view, their viewpoint, and what they heard their fellow officers say, that it could have been legit from their perspective. Not to say that the whole shooting is legit. It's not. He should not have been shot at all. But I just don't know who is at fault or how many people are at fault for the shooting. Do you know what I'm saying? It could be
Well,
the person yelling
when
gun.
when you watch that video, it's not like there's a whole group of people. There are those two women, and then
And see, I didn't
him,
see I didn't
and
get
there's
to
a
see a
cluster
video
of
with women.
officers.
But see, I didn't see a video with women. I heard
Okay, the
that in a
first,
newscast afterwards that it was something about a woman. I didn't know about two women, and I didn't.
yeah.
I heard that they were arresting a woman that was an illegal immigrant. That's what ABC News had talked about. And so I'm like, well, okay. So, again, I didn't see the video. That's where I said, I wish I had a video that showed the total thing and I could speak more, accurately to any of those situations. But all I'm saying is I haven't seen those, precipitating events. So I don't know. There's too much unknown.
Well, the officer that pushed the two women, one was in a brown jacket, the other one was in a white jacket. He pushed him, then Freddie got in between him, and then he started spraying his big jug of bear spray, pepper spray, and just kept his hand on it, sprayed Petty, sprayed the two women, sprayed himself, and then pushed Freddie, and then everybody else jumped on. Right. One particular time, you've seen 4 people in the video, and then all of a sudden, all the ICE officers showed up. It wasn't like there was a bunch of civilians that showed up. It was ICE officers. And
but there were civilians all around. I mean, we're talking about a busy Minneapolis, a downtown block. It's not like it's, a ghost town and there's nobody around. There were a ton of people around.
I agree with that. But just because there's a protest going on over, 50 feet away doesn't mean that protest is right there. And then if that protest is right there, then who justifiably did anything because they put themselves in that spot 50 feet away? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I don't know.
I believe that's a bad shoot.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I just don't know who is at fault there. That's all I'm saying, because the officers who shot, I'm just saying, I could see the situation that their heads are on a swivel. They're trying to pay attention and make sure that it's not going to get super out of hand super fast. And
well, it gets into something that I've said for a long time here now, after watching a lot of videos and stuff, is police officers don't know how to investigate. And they use the stupidity to justify this qualified immunity.
Well, there shouldn't be qualified immunity anyway.
Well, the officer's thinking it's a good shoot because somebody hollered gun. But he didn't see a gun, so he shot anyway, right? That's stupidity. You don't shoot somebody because somebody hollers something. If you think about that, is it okay to holler fire in a theater? Absolutely, if there's a fire. But if there's no fire and I don't see a fire, then why should I react to it?
Yeah, I think that's I think that's a very ignorant statement. I think if you're in law enforcement and you are in the situation where you're going to have to make split-second life or death decisions, and if your partner, if you hear not just some random person yell gun, but you hear your partner or one of your partners yell out gun, again, I wasn't there. I'm not saying that the officer who shot isn't at fault. I'm just saying there's more that goes into that than it's not analogous to, some random person yelling gun or, a random person yelling fire in a movie theater. They're just totally different scenarios. Certainly you have to be able to rely on your partners when you're in those law enforcement situations. And so, I mean, if I was a law enforcement officer and my partner was, yelling gun, because that's all, I mean, what are they supposed to do? Yell out an entire long sentence? If there's a legitimate immediate harm of being shot, you're going to yell gun. You're not going to yell, oh, the person in the purple jacket has a, 9mm and it looks like they're going to point it right at you. Oh, no, sorry, they're going to you don't have time for all that. You're going to yell gun and then you're going to be ready to react. So I just simply don't know who else who all is
Yes.
responsible. I think the guy who got shot is responsible for, he's criminally responsible for his own actions, but definitely should not have been shot. I just don't know how many people are culpable for, or their level of culpability, like I said, because if it's something is intentional and unjustified, it's murder. If it's not so intentional, partially justified, something you might be looking at, or intentional but justified would be self-defense. You'd have, not intentional but reckless disregard for human life is more like manslaughter. I'm just saying I don't know at what level or who totally would bear any kind of criminal responsibility there. So it's a tragedy.
Well, the other side is the very first shot that was taken was shot in a cluster of officers and Pretty. There was officers already on top of Pretty, and this officer shot amongst that group. That would scare me to death. I would never want that officer anywhere close to me in any circumstance because he just now put every other officer that was there at risk.
No, I don't think so. Let's look at it from a different perspective. Let's say that the guy actually had a firearm, not a phone. He had an actual firearm in his hand.
Completely different scenario.
I know, but I'm just saying,
didn't have.
I'm not saying this to change the blame towards the guy. I'm just talking about you saying the officer that initially shot into that scenario, close quarters with different people, that automatically he's unsafe. And I'm saying, no, that's not the case but let's think of it from a different example that might just make it a little bit more clear why, an analogy. So you have the similar situation, but let's say the guy, instead of a phone in his hand, he had a gun. Now, if he had a gun, then the officer who is making the first shot, if he's shooting him to stop the threat that's right there, he's not the one being unsafe just because there's multiple people all around. Obviously, the greater the risk when you have more people in the potential spray pattern of your firearm, clearly. But if he's trying to neutralize an immediate risk of harm, then that doesn't make him automatically the unsafe officer in that situation. And again, I'm just saying, because we don't know what that officer who shot, we don't know exactly what he saw, what he heard. It could be that it was intentional. It could be that it was, instinct based on a legitimate call out from from one of his partners. It could be he had enough, that he had seen enough and heard enough to know there was not an immediate threat, or it could be quite the opposite. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just saying it does not make him immediately unsafe because he was the first one to open fire in that situation with multiple officers and the individual all in close proximity. That's all I'm saying.
Well, and just put that all together. Let's say that Pretty did have a gun and he was in a situation, he was in the physical place that he was at the time he was shot in the back with both of his arms up underneath him. And let's say that his phone was a gun instead of a camera. What risk at that point was he to any officer? He couldn't move his arms. He couldn't point his gun. He couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
The only thing they could have done is grab the gun out of his hand while he's laying on the ground while everybody else is piled on top of him and he can't move.
I don't agree with that. And I just think there's not enough information out there. There's a lot of assumptions being made. So I'm just going to agree to disagree with you on that.
I'm just taking your scenario and putting it together to where, he had a gun and he was physically trying to harm them. He wasn't physically trying to harm them in no way, shape, or form.
I know, but I wasn't saying it to prove that he was. I was just saying it to prove the point about the officer and shooting into a close proximity. That's all I was saying. So, at any rate, I appreciate the dialogue.
Yeah.
And
I didn't want to get into that today. I kept trying not to call in. It's like I keep hearing it. And some people need to hear a different point of view to where they go and take themselves and go start watching these videos and make their own assumption over what they're being told. Like you said,
Yes.
ABC News said this.
And that's the
Well,
thing. More people
ABC
need
News
to.
wasn't there.
Well, right. And that's why I don't just read the articles about it. They just happen to have a video compilation. So, at any rate, I always recommend to people, when it comes to a document, read the source document yourself. Don't take the word of somebody else. If it comes to an action item like this, watch the video if there's video. Watch multiple videos. If there's 10 videos, watch all 10. I mean, I would watch I've watched every single angle I've encountered. I'm going to be honest, I don't have the time or the patience to go try to track down multiple different views. But if I see it come across my feed, I'm like, oh, cool, this looks like an angle I haven't seen before. And then I'm going to look at it, So I'm open-minded to that. And I think people need to be. I think that is very important. And I'm totally okay with, me having a different opinion than somebody else on this. I just hope that that I have been and will be able at least to clearly articulate to not just you, but to all the listeners about why it is that I'm coming to those conclusions. And to anybody who thinks differently from me, at least to give you a different perspective and hopefully get you at least to think about it from that new perspective before immediately setting it aside. But because the entire time I'm going back and forth in my mind about, well, this perspective and then this perspective and then this, and they could be criminally liable or they could be not at fault or what, you know what I mean? So I think it's just important we remember that all the people involved are humans. So,
yeah. Well, I think anytime somebody's shot in the back, period, is total responsibility of the person that did so. After that shot was done, all the other officers backed off and multiple shots were shot after that. So the kill shot may not have been the first shot.
So I'm just going to be the contrarian and say an easy example of how what you just said is not accurate. Let's say, being shot in the back. If someone grabs my child and they're taking off with her and they've got her arm and they're running away with her and they're going to kidnap my child and they're getting ready to jump in a van, I'm going to shoot him dead cold in the back. I'm going to shoot him in the back of the head. I'm going to shoot him in every body part other than the arm that they are using to grab onto my child because I do not want to injure my child. I'm going to get anywhere I possibly can to make sure my child is safe. I don't care if they're facing away from me. Just because somebody is shot in the back does not mean the immediate threat is over.
I agree. I mean, that's a completely
you just said anytime
that I can agree with you on.
Okay, well, you just said anytime somebody is shot in the back, that it's, the person who shot him in the back is always in the wrong. And I'm just saying that's not accurate. But
I agree with you with that. What I'm saying is, a guy's walking down the road or, been pinned to the ground, whatever, and he's no threat at all. And to be shot in the back, then that person who did so, whether it be an officer, another individual, whatever.
I think there needs to be...
I've had somebody break into my house before, and I loaded a shotgun up. And the cops were on the phone, and I told my wife to tell them, if they come back in, they don't need to come. They need to send the coroner, because I wasn't putting up with it.
So here's something I would say that the goal of all the times that I've said I don't know and I didn't see and it could be, I think what needs to happen is, first of all the agencies that exist, I saw somebody in the comments saying that ICE shouldn't exist and DHS shouldn't exist, or TSA shouldn't exist. I agree that all of these multiple letter agencies, the alphabet soup needs to not exist. I think there should be at the,
too much bureaucracy.
There should be only elected people in government, and that includes law enforcement. And so sheriffs, for example, for a sheriff's department, that's a legitimate constitutional law enforcement agency. But anyway, so besides that, because they already do exist, I would say at this point in time, because these agencies do exist, I think what Tim Waltz was saying, that he wants to make sure that his Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Investigation is able to do their own investigations into the shooting, The FBI and DHS are doing their own investigations. I don't know if there's another agency or two out there besides that are also going to be doing investigations. I think that every agency who legitimately has a tie or legitimate purpose in investigating the situation should be doing a thorough investigation. And then when the investigations are done, I think they should be comparing notes and making it all made known to the public. Because, I think there needs to be, whether is there training needed on communication and what to do in a situation? Is there training needed on the use of the firearm itself? Is there training needed on de-escalation? Is training really not an issue, and it's all an issue of true premeditation or bravado or ego that just turned violent and deadly? I would like us to know exactly what we're dealing with.
Well, in saying that, it has been said that if you got over a certain IQ, that you are not accepted within the police department. You will never become a police officer because you have critical thinking upon what you're doing. They don't want that. They want to train an officer to basically become a militarian, to where their job is to go in and take over situations no matter what.
If you've seen that in any true credible source documents, please forward that to me, because that honestly sounds like the biggest load of bullshit I've ever heard. I think that I have no trust and faith in police, law enforcement agencies. And I certainly, like I just said, I don't think police agencies should exist because they're not elected. But I also don't agree that that's a legit thing. So if you come across it, even if you haven't yet, if you ever do come across an actual source document, training manuals or whatever the thing is, right, that talks about that IQ cutoff thing, I would love for you to send it to me. contact@restorefreedomkh.com. Send it to me, because I would seriously like to follow up on that.
Well, I know it's been said, and I will, next time I hear it, I'll try to get that information, because, it gets to be, when you start seeing guys like Dan Bongino and all these other police officers who have left the enforcement field and are out here, doing critiquing on things, and you listen to them, and then you go to another group called Leo Roundtable and listen to what those guys are saying. These are actually police officers who are still in it and who will justify what happened in every scenario. And it gets to be like, okay, wait a minute. If you're going to justify everything that happens in a scenario, then what are you doing? What puts you into that position that you can do that? Years of experience. Okay, years of experience of doing what? The right thing or the wrong thing? So, it gets into a lot of different stuff here that, we agree on a lot, Catherine. And the reason why I got on here is because I could tell you were only seeing it from a certain perspective. And like you said, you haven't seen all the videos.
I'm not only seeing it from a certain perspective, I'm just sharing with you what I think the most plausible perspective is. Just because you don't agree with me doesn't mean that my perspective is blinded, just because we don't agree. But
okay, so let's take out saying that neither one of us has ever seen any video. ICE agents shot the lady in the car. That's all you ever hear. You don't get any other perspective on it. So now you've got one thing that an ICE officer shot somebody in a car. Now you've got to start questioning yourself. A guy was shot in the back, laying on the ground by an ICE officer. That's all you know. Until you start looking at all of the videos and start putting the whole scenario together. Now, I'm one of those guys that I could look at a video and say, yeah, that's exactly what happened. Or I play devil's advocate and say, what, when, where, and why.
Oh, I would do I do the same thing. I constantly have questions. So, even when I was a defense attorney, I didn't just take even my own client's word for it. I wanted to get as much evidence out there as possible to help paint the full picture of what happened and to know. And I would tell my clients all the time, I can't do my job if you're not going to tell me the truth and tell me up front, because I can't let something surprise me, in court. So that's what I'm all about. I want to know what really happened. I'm just saying that we need to keep in mind there are different perspectives. And even if somebody ends up being in the wrong, we still need to remember the true culpability level, because a lot of people jump to conclusions and go, okay, well, this shooting was wrong, therefore the ICE agents involved are guilty of murder. And I think that's total bullshit. It's not at all accurate. I can tell you that for a fact. It's not immediately accurate. That's why there needs to be an investigation. So I think, was the shooting not justified? Like, it was a bad shooting. Yes, he should not have been shot. That we could say for sure. I'm just saying we need to think of the perspectives and get more information, because who is culpable and what they're culpable for is really, it's important. And like I said, it boils down to what kinds of training might be needed, or, who needs to be trained, or, does somebody need to be fired? Does somebody need to be criminally charged? What needs to happen here? Because let's be honest, none of us are perfect in our jobs. I'm not perfect in my job. I don't know what you do for a living, but I guarantee you're not perfect in your job, because we're all human, right? So we all make mistakes. So we need to remember that ICE or police or sheriffs or FBI or whoever it is, they're going to make mistakes too. And, doctors make mistakes. And I hate to dare open like a Pandora's box, but, I watch shows like Grey's Anatomy. The liberal nonsense that they put into that show drives me insane. And I've almost turned it off multiple years. But I've been watching it since before my son was born. Okay. I've been watching it for over 20 years. And it's just, you have a rapport with the characters, right? So anyway, and it's something that helps my mind kind of unwind until they bring all the political bullshit in, and then it pisses me off. But regardless, the episodes where you have a doctor who has done something to screw up and someone ends up dead, I can't help but think, wow, should they really be a doctor? Should they continue to be a doctor? What level of culpability should there be? Should they be criminally responsible? Should they be civilly responsible? Should they be allowed to even continue in that career? I have all those questions every time something like that happens. And what we have to remember is that we're all human. So if a doctor, for example, the very first time a patient ends up dying because of something a doctor does, now I'm not talking about anything intentional, but some sort of mistake is made. If the first time a patient dies because of something a doctor has done accidentally or whatever, right? Something they maybe should have foreseen but didn't foresee coming, a complication or something like that. If we immediately said, hard and fast rule, then you can no longer be a doctor, I think we would have a hell of a lot worse healthcare crisis than we already do, because I don't think we'd have very many doctors left, because we all make mistakes. And so the same thing, and it's scary. It's really scary to think about, because I don't want to ever go into surgery with a surgeon that, I know has ever been the cause of somebody dying from any issue, complication, or whatever. I'm just saying that, so when you have law enforcement, just because somebody has done something, and it's very similar. I guess the reason why I bring up doctor and, law enforcement is, they can be very much both life and death situations. And so if you have quick, on the spot, usually with the law, in my job, it's usually not as, quick life or death. I might have to be able to argue, real quick on certain subjects that are surprise to me in a courtroom. But it's nothing like the, like an actual, a life or death situation where in that moment, if I don't turn the scalpel this way, or if I don't draw my gun or not draw my gun in that moment, that somebody's going to die. And so I just think we need to keep in mind they're all humans. And even if they did something they shouldn't have, we need to really think about the situations where what are the situations that is it's a tragedy and we wish it didn't happen, but that is still a good officer who is going to do good in the community, who's going to learn from that and, you know, never do that particular thing again, versus, wow, that is a mistake, that person is unhinged. They should never be allowed to, you know, be in law enforcement ever again. You know what I mean? So I just think the true big picture really has to be looked at to determine how do we move forward in this particular instance, but in all related instances, every time you have something like this. And that's the kind of discussion I think we need to have. So I'm totally fine that you called in and had a totally different point of view. I might not agree with you, but that's okay, because I think, you know, just like what Charlie Kirk died for, it was not to be able to be out there and say your piece without being, you know, disagreed with. It's about, you know, having a safe place to have that dialogue, that discourse, that back and forth, where people can, you know, use their own brain cells and come up with their own thoughts and not just have group think. So it's fostering that whole critical thinking. So anyway, I could go on all day about that, but I appreciate your call.
Let me ask you.
Yeah.
Let me ask you one quick question here. Are you going to go stand in front of a guy holding a gun?
Am I going to stand in front of a guy holding a gun? See, the contrarian in me is thinking, well, it depends. Is my child behind me?
No, just you. Are you going to stand in front of a guy holding a gun, pointing it at you? Period. That's a scenario.
Yeah, but what's around me? Are there preschoolers right behind me?
Doesn't matter.
It does matter, because hands down. Hold on. I'm going to answer.
That, Catherine.
No, but that's the thing. And maybe men have totally, I know men's brains function differently, right? And you're able to like turn off certain parts, whatever. I'm telling you, as a woman, as a mother, as a wife, it is literally impossible for me in a split second to not take all that into account. In any given second, I'm going to be thinking, oh my gosh, you know, if there's a guy with a gun, who's here? So if, let's say we're in my neighborhood and there's a guy on the street, and let's say my daughter is safe in her bedroom, but I know there's a 7-year-old boy that lives right across that way. I know there's a 10-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl that live right there. I know there's a 12-year-old girl and her older sister who's 14 or 15 that live right there. My son, who's 22, lives right across the street, and his girlfriend is 21 and lives right across the street. They have other 20-year-olds that live right next door to them. I'm going to be thinking about that, like, okay, my son's car is gone, so he's good. Oh, but his girlfriend's car is here, so she's in danger. Like, whatever it is, that's what I'm going to be thinking about in every split second. So you can't say, you know, what is the, you know, I'm just going to have life self-preservation skills just for me. Because
I'm giving you the scenario that none of that's involved.
Okay, then you didn't really give me a scenario. I'm just telling you that
is the scenario. A guy is standing in front of you, or a woman pointing a gun directly at you. Are you going to stand there?
It depends on what the situation is. That's my. I don't know how to answer you. That is my answer.
That's all of the situation.
Well, I'll tell you what. If I have no cover, if there is no cover, if I'm in an open desert and there is no cover, you're damn well straight I'm going to be looking at them, because I'm not going to, if there's nowhere to get away, then I'm not going to bother turning my back to them. I want to see what the hell they're going to do. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to do something to try to disarm them. I'm not going to simply just turn and run and have them shoot me in the back. So again, it is not as simple as saying that. If there's no cover, I'm going to be thinking about that. Is there cover? Is there, concealment? Is there, do I have a weapon of my own? You know,
I'm glad you're throwing all those into it, because here's what I'm getting ready to say. You said earlier that if you've got a doctor who has done something, whether he did it wrong, whatever, the scenario came up and he lost his patient, a surgeon. Okay, so he could be the best surgeon in that particular field, and he lost one patient, and he doesn't learn from that, then he's going to lose every patient after that for the same scenario. With this officer sitting in front of Renee Good's car after being drugged down the road, where he put himself in front of a lethal weapon.
And that's where I disagree with you. Right there. I think that's the bullshit scenario you're setting up. That is not the situation at hand. Given the situation, she no longer had the right to just drive off the way she did. She needed to remove herself from her vehicle and handle it, given where they were at that point in time. And maybe it would be a temporary detainment. Maybe it would be an actual arrest for obstruction. Maybe all kinds of things. But absolutely under no circumstances was she to use her vehicle as a weapon, and she did. And I don't think the cops, especially the one with recording at the time, he didn't just start in front of the vehicle and stay there the whole time.
No, he drove around her and put himself there.
After he wasn't there for her, though. You're acting like he showed up to the scene to cause her some discomfort. That's bullshit. No, stop. No, that is not what happened. It's not like he found out that this woman is in a maroon SUV and she's giving us a hard time. You better come over here, Bob. And so Bob shows up.
Talking through the window.
He was already, he's on
Catherine, we're not going
scene.
to get anywhere in all this until you start watching more videos. You know, I love you to death, and I set my alarm clock for 12 o'clock for every other.
Okay. I don't know if you guys can hear this. I can't hear you anymore. I don't want to hang up on you, but you just keep talking over me okay, you can hang up. That's totally fine. So what I was trying to say in that scenario, we've already gone through this. If somebody wants to have dialogue back and forth, that's fine, but I don't want to beat the same dead horse. And just because I've come to a different conclusion than you, and I don't mean you as the individual that just called in, I mean any person in a situation like this, we can have a dialogue back and forth. But just because I disagree with you does not mean that it's me saying, oh, well, I just need to be told the same thing 15 more times. That is not the situation. I'm of the opinion that is probably different than yours and maybe every single other person that's watching this or hearing this right now or in the future, which is fine. But my opinion, my professional opinion, as well as my just a human opinion, is that no one is there's no way that Renee Good did what she was supposed to do. None of the things she did in that scenario were okay. At no point did she make any right or appropriate choice. I also don't think that the officer in that scenario did anything wrong. None of the choices. He didn't just show up, as I was rudely cut off from trying to say. He did not show up to the scene just to deal with Renee. He was on scene to deal with the ICE situation, the actual immigrant that they were there to handle. That's why he was on scene. And did he move his vehicle and then start dealing with the situation with Renee? Yes, he did, because she was already obstructing and causing a scene and interfering with the operations that they were doing. So I think it's really uneducated to say that it's all his fault because he got in the way of her in her vehicle. Had she just actually left like she was supposed to have left, and when she was directed to leave all along, then none of that would have happened. But she chose not to leave. So at that point, they're saying, I don't know what you're trying to do here, but then just exit the vehicle, because you're not going to be here in this vehicle that you could potentially use as a weapon and cause a scene and a distraction and everything else and interfere with this operation that we have. So that is a totally different scenario than the guy who was shot in his back. Again, you could disagree with me and that's fine, but just don't keep beating the same dead horse and expecting me to have a different response. There was not any new information that was provided to me. It was a difference of opinion that was provided to me, which I'm open to hearing, but it doesn't mean it's going to change my perspective. Blue Line Transparency at some point said, I know Catherine won't see this for a while. However, I question the idea that it's okay to flee from a mob around your car, but not also a mob of armed thugs with guns and badges. So cops are gods? I think that is, I'm trying to think of the best response to that. I think it's silly. I'm just going to put it that way. It is silly to say that, because anyone who's been at all listening to a damn word that I've said would certainly not say that I think that cops are gods, because cops are not gods. But they're totally different situations. You know, if I'm just a person driving down the street or parked in a parking lot, you know, just minding my own business, doing my own thing, not committing any criminal offenses, and all of a sudden law enforcement officers decide they're just going to like swarm my vehicle and threaten me and point firearms at me and do all the rest, I don't know what I would do in that scenario. I would think it's the FAFO, right? Because in that moment, I'm visualizing that right now, and they would not have the right to do that. But self-preservation tells me that I wouldn't try to gun it and get out of there, because if they already have their firearms drawn and they're being violent and whatever towards me, I'm probably not going to make it out alive if I tried to drive away at that point. So, you know, but really, where has there ever been a situation where it's law enforcement officers literally doing the same thing that you have seen in the downtown LA riots, for example, where they are damaging people's cars while they're in them and stopping them from driving? Just citizens. We're not talking anything about law enforcement. I've never heard of such a thing. I mean, certainly that's not what happened with Renee Good. This was not a mob. They were people there to do a job that she is there to try to stop them from doing the job. That's what she said. That's what her wife said they were there to do. That was their whole purpose. According to them, that was their whole purpose. They were going to go stand in solidarity with their Minnesota neighbors, when they're not even from Minnesota, and stop it from happening. So anyway, I really hope that it's whatever. Okay. So let's see. Okay. Wow. I am really saddened by the lack of educated comments that I'm seeing. So I'm just going to leave that whole subject alone. Leave it to a lawyer to lie to the people. You are more than welcome to see yourself out of my channel and never come back. I mean, seriously, if you're just going to be an asshole, just leave. I don't want to deal with your shit. I haven't lied to anybody. I don't lie to anybody. And your comment in isolation doesn't even allege what I'm lying about. It just says that I'm a liar. So just fuck off and leave. Okay, even this. Somebody says, I have seen several videos on YouTube of cops deliberately... Hold on a second here. I'm just going to switch the chat. Okay. I have seen several videos on YouTube of cops deliberately making it seem like they are in front of cars so they can legally murder people. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. But that's not what happened in the Renee Good situation. So they weren't targeting her. She's purposely calling on the attention to herself. She's literally the definition of FAFO. I mean, seriously, people. Wow. I'm appalled that people that remotely call themselves freedom fighters or interested in truth and our Constitution and all that entails are... Wow. I mean, what those kinds of comments do is advocate for anarchy, complete anarchy, that there is no need for law and order ever at all. And that's such a, like, that's a 180 from, just fighting against tyranny, tyrants and whatever. Okay. All right. Just looking through, I don't see anything that says question. That you guys, okay. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. I just accidentally deleted a comment. That's not what I meant to do. I don't even know what comment it was. So if I deleted your comment accidentally, I didn't mean to do that, but I don't know how to undelete it. The little 3 dots went away. Okay, so it says I deleted all the messages. Okay, well, apparently I deleted all someone's messages. Okay. So, all right. I'm just looking to see if they're, thank you, Six Oaks Farm. Yes, let's not forget the wife's video from Renee Good's situation, where her wife says, well, it's not even the wife's video. That's a whole nother thing. Where is the wife's video? If the wife was recording the entire time and Renee is innocent in all this and it's all the big bad cops, then where is Renee Good's wife's video? Exactly. But her wife, when she's standing outside of the car, she says, drive, baby, drive, like, really? So she's not trying to use the vehicle as a weapon. Okay, yeah. She's just trying to get out of there, but she leaves her wife. She's trying to leave the scene, leave the whole area, but she's leaving her wife who's outside of the car. You guys come on. Okay, anyway. So, all right. If you guys, sorry, I was like trying to really pay attention to what the caller was saying, so I wasn't really seeing a lot of the chat. I just, I didn't want to, I notice when I do that, when I have a caller on and you guys have a lot of chat and you're responding in the chat, if I'm focusing and I'm getting myself sucked into reading what you're saying and you guys have responses to either what I'm saying in the call or what the caller is saying, then I'm no longer really fully paying attention to what the caller is saying. So I can't really do both at the same time. And I was trying to, especially since the caller and I were disagreeing, I was trying to fully pay attention to what he was saying, and I wasn't picking up on any of the comments on either side of this. Anyway, okay. So I'm just trying to see, you guys had a lot of chat back and forth. Okay. Yeah. Blue Line Transparency did a super chat and said it's for coffee. I appreciate conversation with smart folks, even when I deeply disagree. And I appreciate dialogue. And John Q. Public, by the way, when the caller was on, the one comment that I heard or that I read that I was trying to leave on my screen so I could address it later, you said something about all my questions tend to piss her off. And no, your questions don't piss me off. I don't even remember what your one question was. Were you the one that maybe asked about? I don't know. But yeah, I welcome debate and dialogue, and I would love it if I, had $1 billion. Okay, fine, even just $1 million, and I had a studio, and all you guys that are in the chat, if you actually just showed up and you would just have a chair next to me, and so you sit next to me for 10 or 15 minutes, and we go back and forth and have a dialogue, and then the next person comes up and sits next to me, and I would love to have that in-person dialogue back and forth. There's a lot that just kind of gets, I don't know. It just doesn't have the respect and the flow, the whatever. It's missing a lot by being just via chat and text and even over the phone. It's missing a lot. So, I would much prefer if I had the situation where we could have dialogue like this in person, because yes. But if you ask me a question, let me give you the answer. That does piss me off. If somebody asks me something and then I'm trying to give you an answer and explain why my answer is what it is, at least let me do that. And I will say, if you're going to call in to my channel and you're going to say something and you have like this series of thoughts, if I ask you to pause, it's not that I'm trying to stop you from your whole thing. It's that you said something that I either have a question about, or I just want you to more fully develop that point of thought before we continue down the road. Because oftentimes, if I take logic very seriously, okay? I mean, I literally had logic classes in college where it's the mathematical side of logic. I'm not just talking about it in a general sense, but that's how my brain works. And really, in reality, that's how things work, right? If you're having a dialogue and you're saying, well, if A plus B, if there's A plus B, then it has to equal C. And I'm like, well, where are you getting A from? Before we say A plus B equals C, I don't even see A. I see B. I don't see A. I see there's bananas on the table. I don't see any apples. So where are you getting the apples from? Just show me. Just tell me. Explain to me. That doesn't mean that it's nothing other than I literally have that question. I just want you to pause because I want to know more about what you're saying, or I have a question. Maybe you've said something. I'm like, whoa, I have no clue what you're talking about. Can we pause on that thought and you explain it to me a little bit more so I can follow the rest of what you're saying? Because if I have a question, chances are the other people that are listening also have the same question. So anyway, I explain that because whether it's Danny's thoughts or anybody else, my conversations with my husband are the same way. If he says something and I'm like, whoa, you've lost me. Hold on. I don't want to pretend and just go, yeah, okay, and then go down the rest of the conversation. If you've just lost me on something, let's address that so I can be on the same page with you. Whether I agree with you or not, fine, but I want to be on the same page with you. I want to at least have a common understanding so that we can then decide if it's just a difference of opinion. I hope that makes sense. So my questions are genuine. When I ask you a question, I'm being genuine about that. So I hope that does not discourage you from calling in and asking a question or, having some discourse and dialogue. If it does, I mean, if true dialogue and discourse is a discouragement to you and you don't want to do that, you just want to call and tell me, you're wrong and this and that, but then this is not the channel to do that, I guess. So, well, Rose, you say stop explaining myself. I'm explaining because I want people to know that's what I expect. I'm just clearly articulating what my expectations are, so that, I want people to continue to call in, even if they disagree with me. I just want to lay out what my expectations are. And that's not my way of shutting somebody down just because I have questions about their position. I might pause them. to get some clarifications first. Okay, so I can't even see what the other, I don't know. Okay. I'm just laughing at myself because I accidentally apparently just deleted all of somebody's, it's a new person to the channel and I apparently deleted all their comments. So now I can't see anything. Okay. Okay. So do I see, okay. Is there a question? I don't even know what that means. Okay. Okay, so I'm just trying to see. I don't want to, I'm talking about officer taking out officers she never would have stopped. Yes. Joy, just about the shooting one, well, the second shooting one without a car. Joy says, the officer who yelled gun wanted the man to get killed, in my opinion. And that could very well be. And that's why I think there needs to be an investigation. I just think we need to look at what was reasonably prudent in that situation before we judge them, before we think we're judge, jury, and executioner against anyone in the situation. I think we just need to totally review and get all the footage and all the whatever, right? We need to see what it looked like in the environment. Literally put yourself in the shoes of every person there before you're judging them. That's all I want to do, because they might need to be held criminally responsible. They might just need training. They might need to be removed from their job. They might, I don't know. I want to know. I want to know. Okay. So, okay. I don't see, I'm just looking for the word question. I just want to make sure that, John Q. Public, I did see this earlier and I did want to address it. So John Q. Public said brandishing is still not a deadly force situation. Oh, I just broke my pen. That sucks. And the thing is, I 100% disagree with that. Remember what brandishing really is. It is not just the appearance of your firearm. It is the appearance of your firearm in a manner suggesting you are getting ready or willing to immediately use it. So, and I would dare say that brandishing in that sense is also where there's a lack of self-defense. If somebody else is pointing a gun at you or is acting like, if they're brandishing their firearm, I would dare say you kind of bringing yours out, showing I'm ready, isn't quite approaching brandishing yet. It's like, hey, I'm going to do what I need to do if I have to. So why don't you just de-escalate and put your damn firearm away? And then, go on from there. But the act of brandishing is like, I have a weapon and I'm ready and willing and able to use this on anyone I see fit right now, right here. I'm ready to do it. That is where deadly force is justifiable. Because what are you supposed to wait until they actually pull the trigger before you then try to subdue them? So you allow them to kill someone innocent. I don't, yeah. So anyway. All right. Okay. My comment to the Joker about DHS was removed by YouTube. Okay. Joy, I could still see your comment. So it wasn't me that removed any comment that you made. It was somebody else. It was a new person that I did not know that I was apparently removing all of their comments, but I could still see yours. I can't even see the other person's comments anymore. So, anyway, okay. So, and I hope, if Danny's thoughts, if you're still around, I did not hang up on you. You started talking over me and I paused you for a minute and then I think you hung up. But regardless, I was not hanging up on you purposely because I didn't want to just end the call there. But it wasn't beneficial to have both of us talking at the same time. So anyway, okay. So, okay. Yes, you guys have a lot of back and forth. I'm just trying to scroll through here and see if you had any other questions. Wow. I guess when the show goes this long, the chat gets quite detailed. So, and it just scrolled on me. I'm sorry, guys. It was scrolling nice and then it jumped. So, I don't see, I'm not seeing any word that says question in all caps. If you have a question for me and I'm not answering it, it's not that I disagree with you. It's literally that I can't see it. I have no problem answering a question that, you know, whether I think I'm going to agree or not agree with the premise or whatever. I mean, I'll at least address it. So, anyway, I'm just not seeing. I'm just trying to make sure. I'm not trying to shut anybody down just because you disagree with me or agree with me, whatever. I don't know. I don't see the word question. Not seeing the word question. I'm almost there. I'm at 212. I'm scrolling. Okay. Question. Authority of ICE, must they work with the sheriff or can they come and go as they please? So it is solely the job of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or I'll say it is solely the job of the federal government to enforce federal laws, okay? And that can sometimes be done in conjunction with, like sometimes state authorities can work in conjunction with federal authorities if they're prosecuting somebody, okay? So, can ICE enforce federal immigration law without working in conjunction with a local law enforcement agency? Absolutely, 100%. Absolutely. If something is in the purview of their jurisdiction to enforce, then that's what they are enforcing. So what people are focusing on is saying, well, ICE doesn't have jurisdiction over traffic law, so they can't have anything to do with traffic law. Well, no, that's not necessarily the situation. And what it's boiling down to is not traffic law. They're not sitting, like at a donut shop with their radar and just watching as people are speeding by, and then they're going to pull somebody over for speeding. They're not doing those kinds of operations on their own. That's the kind of thing that they would do in conjunction with a local law enforcement agency whose jurisdiction it is to enforce, something like a speeding scenario. But when somebody is doing something that is to obstruct the operations of ICE, they are likely also violating a state or local law about something, whether it's a traffic law or it's just disturbing the peace or whatever the thing is, right? They are likely, if they are not just peacefully protesting, but actually obstructing what DHS or ICE is doing, then that person is likely also breaking some other law. And so what people are doing is that the logical fallacy there is that they're focusing on that the local or state law that's being violated and going, oh, see, ICE is just trying to enforce speeding laws, or they're trying to enforce a traffic violation. No, that's not what they're doing. But that doesn't give the person the right to, because they see law enforcement that is designated to do that kind of law enforcement activity. Well, that means, I'm not going to go up to fish and game, wildlife, whatever it's called, DNR, whatever it's called in your jurisdiction. If it were me, I'm not going to go up to DNR and, I see DNR on the side of the road and go, you know what? I'm going to speed right past him just to show him that he has no authority over me. How dumb. How dumb is that? That's not why would you do that? I don't have a right to do that. Does that mean that DNR officer has the right to pull me over for speeding? Quite frankly, I don't know, because I really don't know the full jurisdiction of what that DNR officer is allowed to do. Am I on a state highway that's, adjacent to state property or, state conservation land or something like that, in which case maybe that's part of the I don't know. The whole point is, why would you purposely, think that you have a free pass at violating this set of laws just because it's this kind of law enforcement officer that's nearby? It just makes no sense. So anyway, okay. That answers the question that Lori had. Okay, so Six Oaks Farm asked, any follow-up on your writ of cert? Are you headed to federal district court? Or let me do this, because it's already 2:36 and quite a few of you aren't with us anymore. If you can do me a favor, Six Oaks Farm, if you can bring that very good question up at the beginning of our next show. I totally forgot to address anything about that. I guess I was thinking we had already addressed it. So bring it up at the beginning of next show if you can, and I will gladly talk about it, because I have a feeling there's going to be more follow-up questions and things of that nature. And 16 minutes ago, I see Jay Curvitt that you asked if you can call in. At this point, given that we're 2 hours and 36 minutes into this episode, I'm going to say let's hold off until next week. I apologize about that, but I just wanted to see if there's any lingering questions. I'm just scrolling real quick to see. Okay, Individuality says, are you aware that Minnesota statute section 609.71 makes it a crime to carry a weapon during a riot? I vaguely recall that Tim Waltz might have even been the one to sign that piece of legislation, that it was newly enacted, I think. So relatively, the answer I think is yes, but quite frankly, what does that matter? Because I really don't know where you're getting at with that. Is it, if it comes down to, I don't know. I really don't know what you're getting at with that. But now also a riot is a different situation than peaceful protest, right? A peaceful protest is a totally different situation than a riot. So bringing weapons to a riot shows intent to harm. Bringing weapons to a peaceful protest shows your intent to defend yourself if necessary. Totally different situation. So anyway, okay. So Danny Slots, yeah, I mean, yes and no. I see what you're saying about trying to hijack my show and all that. I wasn't trying to shut you down prematurely either. I do appreciate the dialogue back and forth. So I just wanted you to know I didn't hang up on you because I wasn't intending to just sever that whole topic right away. I just wanted to finish saying my sentence and then get back to what we were talking about. But anyway, it's all good. Okay, so I don't see question. Okay, so I don't see any more questions. So I think we're good to go there. What I do want to do is put the links on the screen so you guys can have them. I don't know, after today, it sounds like it pissed a lot of you off. So maybe it's a lost cause to say, please, if you feel so willing to do so, go to our donate page at restorefreedomkh.com/donate to be able to contribute to this work so I can keep doing this, keep having these conversations. It's important to have this kind of dialogue, by all means. What I'm trying to do is find the appropriate balance between having a good dialogue and keeping a conversation open with someone who has a different point of view, versus when it just seems to start beating the dead horse, so to speak, or, we're really not making any headway. It's just more of an irritation, not just necessarily to me, but to the listener. So I'm at some point, I try to keep that in mind, that is there a benefit to the listener at this point to hear the combination of, of how the dialogue is going. So, and a lot of people tell me sometimes I keep it going way too long. And so anyway, that's, I try to keep the discourse open, but everything, all the documents, okay. Okay. Individuality just pointed out that the question that was asked and that I just answered says that individuality mentioned it because that is how people got misled into claiming that you can't be armed at a protest. And yes, protest is totally different than a riot. So, and I haven't read the language of the actual statute. I can tell you that my very first jurisdiction where I was licensed to practice law was in the state of Minnesota, and I was a criminal defense attorney. I was employed by the state of Minnesota at the State Public Defender's Office. So anyway. So with that being said, I just haven't read that particular statute. Yes, the restorefreedomkh.com/OB case. I do have all the most up-to-date documentation on there, and we'll talk about it in our next show, as long as one of you reminds me and asks me more towards the beginning of the show. And as always, go to the restorefreedomkh.com/resources, or just go to the resources tab and you'll find all kinds of information. Keep in mind this year in 2026, I almost said 2024, I'm trying to be a little bit more proactive in some of the just bite-sized nuggets of all different types, right? Bite-sized nuggets of state constitution, or talking about how God is present in the constitutions, or wellness tips from the wellness research that I had shared in different elements on my personal profile on Facebook, and people were hungry for more and wanting me to share more. And I thought, you know what, fine, we'll have a Wellness Wednesday, and I share a little bit of those tidbits and nuggets every Wednesday throughout 2026. Thursday is doing the Thursday throwback, because that's like a thing, right? Hashtag Thursday throwback. But for me, instead of sharing a picture from when I was in kindergarten or whatever, I am sharing information or a take on an important an important prior U.S. Supreme Court decision, at least for 2026. That is what I'll be focusing the Thursday throwbacks on. And let's see. I still have the Friday freedom fighting tools. I don't remember what else. There's something else out there. But anyway, I will hopefully get to doing a little bit more of the reaction videos and things like that. It just takes so stinking long for me to compile it and compose it, put it together and get it published, that it's like 40 hours to do a 10-minute video on average. And it's a lot. So anyway, and of course I'm shadow banned. So even though I have 17,000 subscribers on YouTube and over 20,000 followers on my Facebook page, and whatever on all the other social media, it might get 50 views or maybe 200 views or something, and it's like, oh, really? Most people don't even see my content, even if they're subscribed or they follow. So that is a little disheartening as well, to spend that much time on a situation like that. So with that being said, I do encourage you to donate, support whenever you can. Don't be discouraged if we have a disagreement on a particular topic, or 2 or 10. By all means, let's have a dialogue, a respectful conversation back and forth. Please join us for the next show. It'll be the second Tuesday, which is the 10th? Tuesday, February 10th at noon Eastern Standard Time. So please join us then. And I look forward to having, hopefully we don't have to have dialogue on even more recent events that are tragedies, and we can start focusing on some other legal aspects. But whatever the world throws at us, by all means, we can be ready to handle in conversation. Just save those big questions for the beginning of the show instead of the end so we can tackle them appropriately. But thank you all for joining. And yes, I'm sorry. She says this on Facebook, Throwback Thursday. All those posts that I just talked about, the Throwback Thursday, the Wellness Wednesday, the Freedom Fighting Tools on Friday, the Saturday State Constitution ones, God in the Constitution posts on Sunday, all of those are on all of the social media that I regularly post to. So I put them on Telegram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, my webpage, my website on the updates tab, and YouTube in the community, whatever it's called. It used to be a community. Now I think it's just called posts or whatever, but I am putting them there as well. So if you're ever not sure where to find information and posts and things, it's always going to be on my website, restorefreedomkh.com. So you could check there, and go to the RS feed. I think it's restorefreedomkh.com/feed, as well as just go to restorefreedomkh.com/updates, and you'll be able to see all those posts there as well. But yes, on Facebook, if you go to the Restore Freedom with Catherine Henry page on Facebook, you'll be able to find it there. I want to say, what's it on Facebook? I think the handle is facebook.com/restorefreedom, I think. So anyway. All right. Thanks so much, guys. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope we all survive the cold in whatever relative definition it might be. But keep safe and stay healthy, my friends, and have a wonderful week. Thanks all.
Our work to restore freedom would not be possible without support from people just like you. From the various software and hardware needed to the legal research materials, every dollar you can donate helps. Make sure to like and share this video too. And remember to follow and subscribe and click that notification button. Together we can restore